it says in residential care, but we're going to look at it for outreach as well, obviously. Just a quick reminder, do not use this information to copy. Give examples where possible, and we're going to be looking at some theories today. So when we're answering questions on theories, we're going to be linking it into our practice. But as we work through it, you'll be able to see how you're going to do that with ease. So the first question is, describe theories of attachment. So I'm going to use 3 theories, but I do want you to research this a little bit more. There is theorists out there as well that support attachment, and I'll give you some ideas of those in a minute. But these are the main 3 that I've put on the screen today. I want you to be using at least 3, and I want you to describe to me what they do, and then I want you to give an example of how you embed that into your practice. So the first theory I put up on screen is John Bowlby's theory. So John Bowlby did multiple studies and researches on children and attachment styles, amongst many others, how they learnt and other things. But his attachment style was very simple. What he was able to evaluate was every child or young person from birth all the way up to adulthood needed to have one primary caregiver. He evidenced that the one primary caregiver would support a child to be able to build an attachment with that one particular person, and therefore it would support them to develop and grow within themselves. Bowlby sort of highlighted that there was many of people that could be involved in the child's life that could care for them, but that one primary person had to be a parent. Hence, the reason why you have key workers in your home. Think about your relationship. If you're a key worker, or think about a relationship of a key worker with the key child. They are mimicking that one primary caregiver, giving that chance the opportunity to build that relationship up with that one caregiver and hopefully develop a good attachment. So that's what he was able to source information, basically. So the next theory that I want you to look at, and again, I've said it before in previous ones, use YouTube. If you're a visual learner, you go onto YouTube and you can get little YouTube shorts of these, and there's little videos which are 3 or 4 or 5 minutes long, and you can watch the actual attachment and how they've been able to gather the evidence, especially with Mary Ainsworth. I did really enjoy Mary Ainsworth's attachment theory, actually, when I watched it on YouTube. It was called the stranger situation theory. So what Mary did was she put a toddler or a young baby crawling toddler in the room with the parent or the mother or the main sort of caregiver. And then what they did was she removed the parent from the room to see what the response of the child was like. She did this with an array of children, from different backgrounds, from different relationships with their parents. She then implemented a stranger into the room to see how the child would react with the stranger and see if they needed comforting, would they go to the stranger for comfort? And then she reintegrated the main caregiver, perhaps the mother, back into the environment to see how the child would respond. Were they happy to see mum? Were they not happy to see mum? Would they stay with the stranger? Would they go straight back to mum? And she did this experiment. And what she was able to attain from the experiment is different types of attachment styles. But do have a look. Mary, just a bit of information, Mary Ainsworth actually worked alongside John Bowlby in the 1950s. They collaborated and worked together for a while because they were both kind of looking to source out information and that around attachment styles. So Mary's stranger situation attachment style was able to evidence this from basically her results were she evidenced a secure type of attachment. It's where the child was securely attached. They felt confident with their main sort of primary caregiver. They felt safe. They felt that the parent was keeping them safe in the environment, and that was identified as a secure attachment. She also identified the avoidant attachment. So the avoidant was where the children do not orientate in their attachment figure. While investigating the environment, they are very independent of the attachment figure, both physically and emotionally. So the child was very much investigating the room, but was away from the person who cares for them. They do not seek contact when distressed. So when they were upset, they did not go to get any comfort from mum. These children are likely to have a caregiver who are insensitive, and reject their needs, the child's needs. She was also identified a restraint theory. Children fall into failed to develop and any feelings of security from their attachment figure, such as mother or father. The children adapted an ambivalent behaviour style towards the attachment figure. The child will commonly exhibit clingy and dependent behaviour, but will be rejecting of the attachment figure when they engage or interact. When distressed, they are difficult to soothe and or not comforted by interaction with attachment figure. This behaviour resulted from inconsistent level of response to their needs from the primary caregiver. That's what she was able to ascertain. So the last one I'm going to go through with you is your overall theory that you can use throughout this whole qualification. It covers every single aspect of this qualification, but very much so the attachment. So it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Abraham Maslow was a scientist and a psychologist that developed this study. He did multiple researches on this, but what he was able to identify, this is normally in a triangle, by the way, he was able to identify that a child needed to be able to certain things before they could develop within their lives. Things such as their physiological needs, food, water, air, sleep, shelter, they needed them to be met. They needed to feel safe, so they needed to feel secure and a good sort of level of stability within the relationship. Their social needs, such as feeling loved, feeling like they belong, sort of that desire of connection and belonging, so from parents, caregivers, families. And self-esteem. So the self-esteem needs to be met. You need to be building confidence with the child, recognising their achievements, praising them, and building on that self-esteem. Maslow identified that each of these stages needed to be met before the child or young person could actually develop further. Yeah, so Maslow basically identified that all of these areas have to be met. So think of it within your home. I've sat there and said to you, I want you to embed this into your practice. Think about what you do. Children come into your home, they make sure you make sure they've got food, water, they have obviously air, they have sleep, they have a roof over their head, they get food and water. Safety, you make them feel secure, making sure the doors are locked, keeping them safe physically and emotionally. Building those relationships up, reassuring them, they may even have locks in their bedrooms, and so on and so forth. Social needs, so what do? You try and work with them, you're building a positive relationship up with them, you're working all the time, showing that they, following that PACE model we've spoken about ages ago, you're following that, building that relationship, building that trust up with the child, young person. You'll also be supporting them to integrate well with other children. Say there's other children in the home, or if you're working outreach, think about how they're integrating with the community or with the children, their brothers and sisters within the home, or parents even. You're going to be building that connection. And then obviously self-esteem. If you're working outreach, you're going to be working with the families to try and encourage them to promote confidence in their child, praising, recognition, rewarding, highlighting achievements. You're probably going to be more so teaching the parents how to do this. But within the home, you're naturally going to do it. They have a good day, you praise them. By meeting all these needs, again, the child will develop, they will grow and go off to the next stages. So yeah, before we move on to the next question, theories, have a look at them. Obviously, I've got a few up here. Please do go on and research theories such as Bandura's theory. He has a very good theory of social theory. Again, that highlights how children develop and learn. There's theories called by Erikson, Piaget. Go and research them and see. Again, YouTube's got little short videos of these, so it's a lot more easy to take the information in. So I want you to highlight the theories that you've found and researched. If you want to use the ones that I have, brill. If not, there's loads for you to find. So I want you to list some of them, talk about what they researched, what they were able to ascertain from the research, and then link it to your practice. For example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like I just did, X, Y, and Z. So the next question is, explain the importance of forming positive attachments for children and young people. So, and this is positive attachments, including primary and secondary attachments. So forming positive attachments is really crucial for a healthy development of a child so for children and young people. Positive attachment is where it encompasses both the primary, which is usually with the caregivers, and secondary, which is others in social environments such as friends, extended family members. Attachment plays a fundamental role in various aspects of the child's life. Here are some key reasons for their importance. It supports emotional well-being for the child, obviously, makes them feel that they're involved in their environment, they feel loved, nurtured, and so on and so forth. It builds self-esteem and identity massively. Self-esteem will derive from the relationships that they have with families or people around them. And identity, again, looking at external families, giving the child an understanding of where they come from is a massive element. It also supports their social development as well. When you have a positive relationship, it teaches them to be able to develop their own positive relationships and therefore supports them to develop more effectively. Children and young people that are in care or on the brink of care normally do struggle to develop good relationships, much because they've not been shown how to do it. So by building one up with them, it's going to teach them how to do it themselves and slowly develop. So again, we've got resilience and coping skills. So positive relationships will obviously support the development of resilience and therefore supporting a young person to be able to cope. Again, you've probably got examples of this. Trust and security. So, lots of these young people, they won't trust you. They won't trust anybody, to be fair, it's nothing personal. But once you've developed a positive relationship, that's going to be able to support that trust to be built. And then when we've got trust, you're going to give that child, young person, a chance to feel secure then. Having trust with somebody, it's actually very difficult to trust somebody, but having that trust will support that security naturally being built. It also supports cognitive development, obviously, and again, communication skills will come naturally. Once this relationship's built, that you're able to then articulate to the child or the young person, and then they're able to articulate back to you. It's really, really positive. It's a really positive outcomes from having a great relationship and attachment with a child or a young person. So explain the short and long-term impacts on the well-being of a child or a young person if they are not able to form a positive attachment. If children and young people are unable to form positive attachments, it can have a significant short-term and long-term impact on various aspects of their well-being. The absence of a positive attachment can affect them physiologically, psychologically, emotionally, relationally, and behaviourally. Oh, that's lots of leads, isn't it? So over the next few slides, we're going to break this down and have a look what this might look like. So physiological needs. Without a positive attachment, children may experience heightened stress levels, obviously. So it's important to have that physical, the positive attachment made and developed to support sort of the physiological impacts. Having this positive relationship will be able to give the opportunity to be able to soothe a child or young person should there be any stresses or upsets in their lives, which, face it, there's going to be. These children are in care, they're away from their families, so you need to be able to step in there and take the role to be able to offer them that support, offer that emotional guidance through these difficult times. Obviously, it's going to impact their behaviour as well. Behaviour is a massive communication tool that children use. If you've got a child who's demonstrating a large majority of behaviours, it is a form of communication. They're trying to talk to you, they're trying to explain to you in a roundabout way how they're feeling. Again, if there's no positive relationship there, the behaviours are going to be more apparent. You're not going to be able to de-escalate the child as easily. Psychological, again, it's going to impact them cognitively. Their development may be delayed. It's going to impact their mental health as well. Emotional impacts, it's going to continue to. There's no positive attachment there emotionally. They're not going to have any support. They're not going to be able to self-regulate. They're not going to be able to feel emotionally safe within their environment. You're not going to be able to implement any strategies because you've got no positive relationship, and you've got, if you've not got a positive relationship, you're not going to have any form of emotional connection. You need these relationships in place to support all of these. It's the biggest part of your job, besides obviously safeguarding. So look at this, and you may be able to give me a really good example of when you've met these needs by having a relationship. So the next question is evaluate evidence-based practice for supporting positive attachments. So these are a few things that you're going to look at, and this is what I want you to be looking at when you're answering this question. Obviously, there's something called parent-child interaction therapy. It's called PCIT. So for the outreach, you will be perhaps using tools like this to be able to build the attachments, but this is a form of evidence that you will be able to log it. You're going to be doing attachment-based interventions, obviously building that attachment, and then you're going to be able to log it accordingly. Trauma-informed care, again, you can talk to me about trauma-informed care. That's the biggest part of your job role. Mindfulness-based interventions, so that's a parenting program that might be used again for the outreach. Obviously, a child-focused approach, that is your main piece of evidence that you need to be evident in across your support and your care for the children. And obviously, you're going to be delivering this therapeutic approach. So think about the following, and think within your setting. Obviously, everyone's going to be different. How do you document this work? And how do you document it's been completed? And then who do you sort of share these assessments completed with? So the next question is, explain how factors in the life of a child and a young person can develop barriers in forming positive attachments. And this is a big piece now to look at, but let's have a little breakdown. So these are going to be some factors that is going to prevent or cause a problem for a child or young person to be able to form a positive attachment. So you've got social and economical stressors, such as poverty, problems with housing. That will have a massive impact on the interaction between the child and the young person. So if you're working on an outreach basis, look at these. Look at how these situations may actually have an impact on the parents and the child actually communicating effectively and having a good relationship. Stress is a massive one, isn't it? Let's face it. Even in our own lives, if we're stressed, we kind of almost get involved with what's stressing us out, and life kind of just passes by. So that's a massive one. Obviously, you might see parents being inconsistent. So having that unpredictability with the parents, that can obviously, well, that will definitely have an impact on a child or young person being able to form positive attachment. We know early trauma or neglect. Again, you can see over many studies the impact on a child's brain from being neglected or having traumas at a very early age. And part of this impact will definitely hinder a young person in being able to develop a positive relationship. They may not probably trust anybody, and they don't really have a real good idea of what a healthy relationship or a good relationship should look like. You might be working with parents with substance abuse. So again, same outreach or within the home, a massive factor. Parent who's got substance abuse will have an impact on any relationships being developed. If you're supporting a child within the care home and their parents are drug abusers, like I said, I've experienced it firsthand, the attachment cannot be, it's not going to be formed correctly, even though there'll be love there and some level of attachment. It'll be so inconsistent that it's never going to be secure. It's never going to be a trusting relationship. But that will lead on to the child or young person not, I suppose, like putting it, categorizing everybody into the same, because like I said before, as parent, the children do not recognize, oh, my mum's addicted to drugs, oh, my dad's addicted to drugs. It's automatically, I'm not a very good person. They can't build a relationship with me, the people they love, because I'm such a bad person. So that sort of line will continue when trying to build a relationship with other people. They're going to think poorly of themselves when they're trying to integrate with other people. So this does have an effect on it. Obviously, you've got the inadequate carers and knowledge and skills. You will be doing this all of the time, especially outreach. There will be a lot of parents that have very little knowledge and skills. Sometimes ill-educated parents can be one of the main reasons why children end up in the sector. So really think about how you might be supporting this within your role. Even if the child's in residential care already and you're having to work with the parents, there's a massive amount of lack of knowledge around parents. I've said this many times. I know it'll never be a thing, but I do believe that before you become a parent, you should do some sort of parenting course. I know it will never happen because it can't happen. It's not doable, but I think that you do need to be able to learn how to be a parent and given at least some rough guidance. So obviously you've got cultural differences, which have a massive impact as well. The child or young person not having an understanding of where they come from, their background, any of their cultural sort of background or beliefs or regimes or anything like that, and that can actually have a massive impact as well. It's about the not knowing where they come from. Parental attachment history. Oh my days, this is probably one of the biggest ones. So parents themselves actually struggle themselves to be able to create attachments, build relationships, and therefore it just trickles down into the kids. So that is a really, really big one. Think of it. I think you would have easily experienced this firsthand. So separation or loss, massively. Obviously, if a child is going through grief, they will not be able to form an attachment or a relationship because they will be grief stricken. That being said, after the grief subsides, obviously it's never going to go away. It may have a long-lasting effect. It may be drive a fear in the child to not want to build a relationship up again because the fear of the loss happening again. So that will affect a child massively. The parents' mental health as well, it can be a massive factor as well. Parents with mental health problems can be inconsistent. They can demonstrate really high and low levels of emotional dysregulation. 1 minute they're really involved, the next minute they're very depressed. They are infiltrating their child's brain with their emotions, and well, it'll be emotional abuse really. If you're looking at it that, oh, I'm sad, and I'm sad because of this, and blah blah blah, so on and so forth. It could be a mental health driven by substance abuse as well. So alcohol's a massive factor. We talk about substances as we're talking about cannabis and cocaine and all the big ones, heroin, but alcohol is as guilty. We know that there's negative effects of drinking alcohol. We know how it can make you feel down. It can make you feel sad in the morning. You take a little while to get over it. That effects actually happens for a few days afterwards. If you ever get a time to do some research on the side effects of alcohol consumption, it's really very, very interesting. But obviously it's legal, so we can drink it. But it does have an impact massively, especially on mental health. Especially when you've had a drink, actually. Everything changes. You see things differently. You feel a bit more relaxed. And then in the morning, you actually plummet lower. So the importance of reviewing sort of possible barriers on the previous slides. So when we looked at all of those sort of barriers, things to stopping these relationships to be developed and formed, this is kind of just summarising and reviewing it. So I've just put in here, recognising and addressing these barriers early is crucial for providing targeted support to children and families. Interventions that focus on enhancing parenting skills, providing trauma-informed care, and addressing underlying mental health issues can help mitigate these barriers and promote the development of positive attachments. So describe the roles of parents and professionals in supporting children and young people to form positive attachments. So what are we going to do? What are our responsibilities, and what are the parents' responsibilities? So parents and professional caregivers play a crucial role in supporting children and young people to form positive attachments. These roles involved providing a secure and nurturing environment, promoting emotional well-being and addressing individual needs. Let's have a look at the next slide in more detail. So the parent's responsibility is to make sure they're emotionally available. Probably one of the biggest failures that you see across the board, parents are not emotionally available for their child, but parents are the primary emotional anchors for children. Being emotionally available and responsive and intuitive to a child's needs and foster a sense of security and trust is forming the basis of a positive attachment. So I suppose if I was to give an example of this is, throughout my experience, if I look at myself as a parent, my husband and I, we lost somebody. They passed away in 2019, who we loved very, very dearly, very, very dearly. And my children did very, very, very dearly. They loved them. We made the decision based on the impact. What we were going through at the moment was we didn't think it was appropriate to tell the children, the kids, the young kids especially, that this person had passed. Not for any malicious reasons or anything like that. We made that decision because at this moment in time, we kept the routine flowing. We kept the children going to school. We kept the children getting up in the morning, putting on our big girl pants and facing the day and getting the children off to school. And then whilst the children were at school, we would grieve, and we would grieve the loss. And then we went back to the normal routine. And again, once the children went to bed, we would grieve. And we did that for a few weeks before talking to the children about this loss. And the reason why we made that choice was because we recognised at that moment in time, because we were so grief-stricken, we would not be emotionally available for our children, and we would be so consumed with our grief that they wouldn't be able to grieve. So, and also as well is, when you've got children as young as, what were they? They were 5 and 7. Yeah, 5 and 7 they were. So when you've got children that young, you can't grieve with them. I'm sorry. I don't know. People obviously have different views and different values, but you can't grieve with a 5-year-old child. Do not believe it's acceptable for your 5-year-old child to see their parents in that much of a state. So it was kind of kept under lock and key for a few weeks until we went through and processed everything, started to get the funeral organised, and then we sat down and had that conversation. And at that point, we could literally be there. We were prepared for the not being able to go to bed. We were prepared for the waking up in the night. We were prepared for the upset, for the crying. So I've used that as a personal example, but that's how you are emotionally available. And there's lots of parents who cannot be emotionally available. Obviously, there's different ways of describing this, but I thought that was a really good example to use. Consistent caregiving. Routines. I'll just give you an example. Putting that routine in place, adhering to that routine, that will help a child survive difficult times. And then giving that level of consistency, again, all my days, consistency, the hardest thing to do, but yet the most important thing to do within your job role. When you're working outreach, you have to be consistent with the care that you're provided. And if you are sharing your cases, so someone's supporting as well, you are consistent within the roles that you play. Within the home, you have to be, you don't have to be the same people. God, oh my days, that would be awful. But you have to be same with the rules, same with the boundaries. If they're in bed for 8 o'clock, they're in bed for 8 o'clock. If there's no sweets after 7 o'clock, there's no sweets after 7 o'clock. If they only get £3 pocket money in hand, they get £3 pocket money in hand. Those rules are there, not for you, but for the child. So you have to follow these rules. These rules have been put in place not because of anyone's trying to be mean or controlling. It's about getting some rules and routine and boundaries in place. It's really important. They need to know that shower time's this. They need to know that dinner time's going to be this. And adhering to it. That being said, on the flip side, throughout my experience, I've learned is once you have that routine solid and grounded and in place, it will give you the opportunity to break it a little bit. You know, so for example, on a Friday night or a Saturday night, they're normally in bed for 8 o'clock. You know, you might discuss with the staff team, do you know what, on a Friday night, how do you feel about, you know, letting them stay up till 8:30 because it's Friday night or what have you. So you can then alter the routine, because once it's solid and in place and grounded, that change will be embraced a lot easier by the child. So responsive communication kind of speaks for itself. It's about being responsive to the communication of the child. I spoke to you earlier, didn't I, about behaviours as the biggest form of communication. So recognising the child's communication cues, recognising what they're trying to say to you, is a really, really big, important part of your job role. And showing that you're actively listening, being able to sort of demonstrate that you're actually paying attention to the child. We've said it on many of occasions, communication is the most important part. If you're communicating with a child, excuse me, a child, and you are having a conversation with them, but your body language is turned to the side, you're not looking at them, you're just telling that child you're not interested. You're not interested in what they've got to say, or you're too busy watching something on TV, or you're too busy looking at your phone, which you shouldn't be, because you shouldn't have your phone. But do you see what I'm saying? You have to be able to be there and be responsive to communication, because they need you. Parents as role models for healthy relationships. So we're going to be demonstrating a consistent level of work with parents where possible, where applicable, obviously. So we need to ensure that as a parent that they are being responsive, they are being accountable, they are being involved as well as much as possible. So I've gone on a tangent about ourselves, but it's all the same, all the same practice really for parents. Okay, so professional caregivers, so such as ourselves, teachers, childcare providers, counsellors, things like that. So our jobs are to create a safe environment. It is to observe and understand, to collaborate with the parents, I said a minute ago, and providing that social interaction and a trauma-informed approach. So what we're going to be doing is, obviously we mentioned about the routine and the rules and the boundaries, and I said that earlier, and even though I was talking about the parents, I kind of went off on a tangent about us, but it's just as important that we are implementing it. We should be supporting the parents to follow the rules and the boundaries. Do you know what, actually, I'll give you an example. Worked with a young person quite a few years ago now, absolutely atrocious relationship between mother and daughter. And I mean atrocious. Daughter used to tell her to go away in swear words every time. And it was like that for quite a while. Mum was very unbounded. She didn't have any rules. She was never consistent. And it was really, really rocky relationship. One occasion, the young person went on family contact. She was quite a good kid, actually. I never had any bother with her. She was very consistent and pretty much always the same. But on one particular occasion, she went on contact, and as she got to her local area, she was going to see, she was going to meet up with the family. She went to her contact place in the local area to meet up with them. And then as she did the contact, she basically said to the staff members, because there were two staff members there just because of the journey, she said, yeah, I'm not going home. I'm going to go see my family. And the staff were saying, sorry? No, I'm not going. I'm going to go see my nan and I'm going to go see my mum, and there's nothing you can do about it. So with that, the young person started to walk off, and she walked off. Staff stayed in sight, followed her, etc., did everything we were supposed to do, notified the home. And she didn't have a phone actually at the time, but she arrived at Nan's house, and Nan obviously, you know, spoke to her granddaughter, blah, 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 so on and so forth. But as she left, Nan then phoned ahead to Mum and said to Mum, so-and-so's now coming around to see you. She's been defiant, she's refusing to return home, and she's walking to see you. The mum phoned up the home. She phoned up the home, she spoke to myself, and she said, I don't know what to do. She was in absolute bits. She was upset, she was crying. What do I do? She's coming round here. I know she's not allowed to be here. This is going to have an impact on her contact, and so on and so forth. I don't know what to do. And she asked me, what should I do? I said, right, well, do you want her to come around and see you? She says, no, because that's not the rules. I said, okay, is she going to listen to you if you tell her that she's not allowed to be here? She went, no. I said, okay. I said, from my opinion, the police are actually, she's been reported as missing because staff have lost sight of her. If she turns up on your doorstep, I make a suggestion that you phone the police and say that she's turned up. And the mother was like really upset and said that she couldn't do that, you know, she felt like she was betraying her daughter and so on and so forth. Long story short, mother phoned the police, said that she was there. The police turned up, picked up the daughter, and then placed her, got in contact with the staff team and placed her in the back of the car and sent her on her way. Mum phoned me back up, was chatting to me, absolutely in pieces, absolutely devastated, crying unconsolably. I was reassuring her that she'd done the right thing. All this went on. The child arrived home absolutely savage. She was so angry. But, you know, what had happened. So for 2 weeks, she didn't speak to her mother. They obviously had contact and that. She didn't speak to her mother for 2 weeks. Obviously, we did key working sessions with the child, spoke to the child. About 2.5 weeks later, her mum got in contact, phoned again, obviously still trying to maintain contact. And the daughter decided to take the phone call. And I supervised, I remember listening. Do you know, that was the first time I ever heard that young person speak to her mother with respect, ever. She spoke to her mum, there was no swearing, there was no telling her to go away in swear word language. They just chatted, and they chatted. And then from that moment forward, that was it. There was nothing, you know, there was nothing negative anymore between their relationship. And that was a really good example of mum putting in boundaries and adhering to rules. That is how quickly it can happen. I know 2 weeks might seem like a mile in years when you're, you know, not speaking to your child, but something simple. It must have been horrific, but now she's got her daughter back. And now I know the child's moved back down that way, and I see photographs of them all the time on Facebook together, happy as Larry. Well, seemingly happy as Larry. So that's a really good an example, and I just wanted to share that with you. So we have to collaborate. That's a good example of collaboration with parents, and it's a good example of encouraging the parents to implement rules and boundaries. So promoting social interaction obviously is a big factor as well. And then we're obviously always going to do this trauma-informed care. So having this sort of like professional care given to the child, especially when there's been a large amount of trauma. But hopefully that has given you an example to be able to example this yourself. Think about what you do, think about how you do it and why you do it, and connect it to your work. Linking it to your work will meet the criteria damn sight easier. So these are some of the common responsibilities. Attachment-informed interventions for both parents and professional caregivers such as ourselves. Having a good understanding about attachment theories, that's what this whole presentation is about. And obviously interactions and interventions, promoting some secure attachments. Again, consistent approach. We talk about consistency all the time. That's consistency between parents and staff, caregivers, ensuring that everyone's working from the same page, sharing those expectations and sharing that practice will enhance the child's sense of security. Hence, the story that I shared with you. In summary, parents and professionals, caregivers collaborate to create an environment conducive to positive attachments for children and young people. Emotionally availability, consistency, responsiveness and collaboration are key elements in building and nurturing secure relationships that contribute to the overall well-being of the child. The example I gave you was an example based on positive outcomes for that child. The outcomes where the child was able to move back to the local area, she was able to build a relationship with her mother, even though she was taken and placed into care because of mother's actions. And things have moved forward. It was a positive outcome. You know now that child's gone back and she's not going to be alone. Explain how attachments impact your own role in residential care and obviously with outreach. So let's have a little look at this. So attachments, they play a significant role in residential in a number of different reasons. But obviously, have a look at what we've got on screen here and try and link it into some of your practice, because evidently speaking, there will be a lot of things that you do, and you will be able to meet the criteria a lot more easily if you give an example. So I'm going to put some of the strategies. The question is outline strategies for supporting children and young people to form positive attachments. So obviously here's a couple that we're going to be looking at. Involving the child or young person and others into the strategy. So when you're coming up with an idea of how to working with the young person to build the strategies around the relationship. So I don't mean sit there and say, hey, what do you think we can do to build a positive attachment? Not like that. Working with them to find out likes, dislikes, work out their expectations of relationships, working out their previous experiences of relationships, but getting them to sort of articulate what they think it should look like will definitely support them to build a relationship, to have an idea of what it should look like, or what they want it to look like, I suppose, more so. By trying to get them involved in other ways, you might turn around and make examples, or get them to make examples. So, what do you think would be a good idea for us to spend a bit of time together? It might be going, I don't know, to the beach. It might be watching a movie together. It could be doing hair, plaiting hair, painting nails. Giving them that level of understanding of what makes them, what make them happy, will give them a sense of sort of independence, and therefore more likely to actually engage with the relationship. Building that level of social skills, obviously, and communication. Being apparent with the level of communication to the capacity of the child is really, really important as well. So being mindful of the child that you're working with, their age and what their capacity is actually at, i.e. 13-year-old might be a level of a 7 or 8-year-old. So using those sorts of strategies will help you be able to build that communication up. By building the communication up, it's going to evidently be able to build up that level of relationship and the attachment to be able to be formed. There is a number of strategies that you might use. So these are some things that we need to be looking at as well. So what strategies have you used? So I'll put a few examples up on the screen when you're answering this question. I've given an overall in the previous screen on about getting the child involved with the strategies, and then also having that good level of social skills and communication. But if we break it down, this is what we're going to do. We're going to obviously have that communication level, but what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at how we respond as well. So communicating one thing, but being visible to be listening to what the child's saying, doing that active listening is a massive one. Validating their feelings, their emotions, what they want is a big way. Having that consistent care, so having that routine in place, having that consistency through the team, having that consistency through your relationship with the young person. So in a nutshell, if you say that you're going to sit down and watch TV with them in 5 minutes, and it is 5 minutes, then you sit down and watch TV with them at 5 minutes. Being true to your word is going to give that child consistency with the one-on-one care. You're going to obviously individualize the approaches that you're going to use. So again, tailoring the strategies to support the child's needs. Some children you could say, oh, I'll be there in 2 minutes. And they don't take it literally. They know that you just mean you'll be there shortly. So that's obviously addressing the communication thing. Some children may be sitting there counting the minutes down, on their clock or their phone or what have you. To if you say you're going to be 2 minutes, they're literally going to say, right, well, 2 minutes. Well, if you're not here in 2 minutes, then and you've not, it's 2 minutes has passed and you're still not here, you don't care about me. And some children are very much like that. But what you want to be aiming to achieve really from that relationship, obviously, if there is no sort of disabilities there, so when I say disabilities, I'm looking at ADHD, autism, things like that. You want to be able to get the relationship to a point where you can say, just give me 2 minutes. And they have an understanding that 2 minutes doesn't mean literally 2 minutes. It means that I will be with you in a second. And then they trust that you're going to come. That's what you're aiming to achieve. So having that individualized approach, recognizing what's going to work for each child. Some children might like to build the relationship up with cooking. One of the children I used to support, they used to like you just to sit in their bedroom. Obviously the door was open for safeguarding reasons, but they'd be watching TV and you used to sit in their room. That was it. There was no real conversation. That was kind of like the standing point we used to do, sit in their room. They just needed to know that somebody was physically there, and then eventually the communication started to happen, and then it built. But think about it. Think about what that child might need. They might need someone to play with. So you might need to go and park with them. You may need to play games with them, Monopoly, things like that, puzzles, all sorts of things. Some people might like to go for a drive and listen to music. Having that quiet, well, not technically quiet, but non-talking one-on-one time can actually build really, really good relationships. But just that individualized approach. Facilitating play, obviously. Do you know what? Facilitating play, I'll tell you now that children and young people, right? No, children like to play. Teenagers, they don't want to play. They're too cool. They're too cool. They want to play. They want to play. I've worked with a young lad who was a gang member, and I did an arts and crafts day, and I put loads of arts and crafts down, and I said, we're going to do some, I don't know, we're doing some daft, painting a picture and drawing stuff and all sorts of random stuff we were doing. I said to him, I knocked on his door, I said, we're going to do some arts and crafts today. Oh, I'm not doing that. And he's a proper rude boy. No, I'm not doing that. I know what you're talking about. 20 minutes later, he was down sitting at the table with everyone sitting there painting pictures. Okay, they do want to play. They do want to engage. They do want to have that crafty time, that Monopoly time. They want to play Just Dance. They want to do all those things. You'll be surprised. So just be patient because it will come. Obviously, you've got to have a safe environment. That is important. There's absolutely no point in trying to build a relationship if that child does not feel safe with you or in the environment as well. Obviously, you've got trauma-informed care, and then encouraging the child to explore new things. So that is another strategy as well. So think about it. You might be able to, there is a question that's going to be on here about explaining or giving an example of how you build positive relationships further on. So maybe that will naturally link into that question later on about how or what strategies you used. There's a few more on here as well. Role modeling healthy relationships, culturally sensitive, providing stability, acknowledgement of feelings, promoting peer relationships, involving the families, and also supporting emotional regulation. So some more strategies that you might use. So describe features of a positive relationship for children and young people. This is kind of like the question I was saying to you a minute ago. What does a positive relationship look like? So a feature of a child or young person of having a positive relationship with others is the development of the attachments they will create and their ability to show empathy. It will also have a positive effects on the child and young person's physiological and psychological stress levels. Having a positive relationship will also contribute to development in other areas. So I've put on here, can you identify any features of positive relationships for children and young people? Have you seen the benefits of positive relationships? Can you have the positive relationships can have on children and young people? So when you look at this, I want you to think about, this is probably the best time to give the example. You might be able to give the example here of a time you've built a relationship with a child, starting off from the very start when they came to the home, or maybe it's when you started working at the home, how you worked with them to build the relationship up, reading about their paperwork, finding out their likes, their dislikes, homing in on that. It might be they liked music, it might be that they liked football. What did you do? Well, I played their favourite music. Oh, I played football with them in the garden. When they started listening to the music, they started to sing the songs. So I started to dance with them, being playful with them, thinking about that, you know, the methods that you're using. So I really want you to think long and hard about that. When you're giving that example, please naturally look through the previous few questions, because I think you might be able to incorporate it in there well, especially the strategies as well, outlining strategies and then talking about I did this and I did that. That will naturally meet that criteria. So next question is, analyse factors in the life of a child or a young person which can contribute to challenges when building positive relationships. So I'll put this in a circle. Don't bullet point. I need you to put sentences, remember. But there is several factors that can actually There are several factors that a child or young person can pose challenges when building a positive relationship. Obviously, they could have attachment issues when they've been subjected to neglect or abuse or trauma throughout their lives. There will most definitely be an attachment issue. Not trusting them or being overly trusting is another one. Family instability can be another factor. Parental substance abuse, if they've come from a background where their parents have had substance abuse, they could have been subjected to inconsistency, neglect, therefore they're going to not perhaps trust another adult. They could have communication difficulties, not being able to articulate themselves. That could be from a physical disability, that could be from autism, ADHD. It could be global learning delays as well. That's another big factor we've got to think about as well. When children have come from severe neglectful backgrounds, they haven't developed accordingly. They haven't developed to the level they need to be at. So think about that as a factor as well. Obviously, we've got the cultural and language barriers, massive factor. If you're not able to communicate effectively, you're going to struggle to develop that relationship. Abandonment of loss, again, the fear of connecting to somebody again through fear of losing that person again will be a massive factor. Economic disparities as well, again, coming from backgrounds of poverty, things like that. Media influence, massive. It's a massive factor at the moment. At this moment in time, these children are subjected to an array of fake and incorrect information throughout social media, YouTube videos, things like that. Will actually give them the wrong idea of how to build a relationship up. I've seen so many things and I look at it and I think, so hang on, that's kind of saying that that's acceptable to behave like that, and that's how you make a relationship and that's how you're supposed to be. So they are subjected to a massive amount of media influence. Stuff all the time is happening. So that can have an impact. Peer rejection, again, they may struggle to trust relationships, especially with young people in the home. If they've come from okay, let's give an example. So if they've come from a neglectful background, maybe they've been not fed properly, maybe they might have been unhygienic, maybe their clothes never fit them properly, maybe their hair looked dirty, maybe they had nits, things like that. Going to school in those instances, children at school may be quite rejectful. They could even be bullying them. So that's another element. But if they've come from that and experienced that, or they could be experiencing that if they're in outreach, that's another factor, being rejected by friends. But that rejection can then travel further on with them in later life. So that could be another barrier. Lack of positive role models. We speak about mum, dad, the primary caregivers are the people that are going to role model them. So when we say role modelling, regardless of whether it's positive or negative, these children are going to be a product of their parents, because if they have technically been role modelled by their parents or whoever was their caregiver for a long period of time. So they may have role modelled negative relationships. So therefore, I put there's a lack of positive. So they'll copy what they've been shown of how to behave and how to treat people. So that is going to be a massive challenge as well. That is a massive one that you've got to overcome. You've kind of got to rework what's been embedded into them for so long. Trauma and adverse experiences, obviously I've spoken about many times. The impact of neglect from a very young age causes children that have been subjected to ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, can delay development, can delay social skills, can delay speech, language, articulation, all sorts of things. So that can be a challenge that you might have to overcome. And I've already mentioned bullying with sort of the peer rejection. But these are a number of things. I've given you an example of media, and I've given an example of peer rejection. But think about it, parents, role models, we role model, think about some of the challenges that you may have experienced personally yourself, or you may have seen happen, and give that down, obviously personally within your job role, not in your personal life, in your job role. Describe ways to support children and young people to build positive relationships when they are affected by emotional and behavioural difficulties. That's the next question. So we're going to be sort of looking at emotional regulation techniques, teaching them how to deep breathe in, managing their emotions, take a deep breath, count to 3, go scream into a pillow, things like this. That's going to teach them how to emotionally regulate. We're obviously going to implement these individualised support plans tailored to the young person's needs. We're going to be clear with our expectations, ensuring that there is a level of consistency throughout the team, especially around their behaviour. Positive reinforcements. So, we know that there's positive and negative consequences that we will maybe implement throughout the time, but positive reinforcement, praising is the biggest way to, get more positive outcomes out of kids, because recognizing, we need to recognize when they have those good days and praise them and reward them for having those good days, because we're trying to flip it around. We're trying to get more positive behavior. So when they've had a good day, oh my God, I can't believe how amazing you've been. Let's pop to the shop. Let's go get a DVD. Let's have a movie night tonight. Let's have a girl night tonight, whatever it is. You need to be recognizing that when it's not been a bad day, when it's not been any high behaviors, and then enforcing that good. Really important to enforce the good. Teaching social skills. Obviously, we're going to be teaching them how to behave in the community. We're going to teach them how to communicate. So that is literally role modeling how to communicate, showing them how to bring themselves back down again, trying to de-escalate themselves, trying to articulate themselves through conversations. They need to be able to talk how to do that. Recognizing when they're getting a bit heated in a situation. Just go and have 5 minutes. Take a deep breath and let's come back. We'll just put a pin in it. I always say, we'll put a pin in it for now. We'll come back in a little while. We'll talk about this in more detail. All of these strategies, all of these are broken down. We're going to have a look at some more on the following slide. But think about all the different methods that you may have used to build a relationship. And here's a few more. So you've got behaviour management, counselling, therapy, building trust, again, promoting self-efficiency, peer mentoring, flexibility, emotional literacy in education, and celebrating diversity. Basically, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at specific methods that are going to be useful to engage a child who has behaviour difficulties. There may be a number of these that you might use. You might be using positive reinforcement. You might be using breathing techniques. So we might write in a plan, this child, when they get heightened, make a suggestion they take time out in their room, having breathing exercises. Maybe then we will ensure that we reward for good days. Might be taking them out on physical exercise. It might be, oh gosh, there's a whole number of things. Giving them that trust through that relationship that you've built by going in and giving them a bit of a side hug, reassuring them. And obviously, it's all going to be tailored to that child. So when answering this question, I think the easiest way to be able to answer it is to be able to pick one of your children that you look after or care for, and think about the strategies that you have in place to manage their behaviours. Because by managing their behaviours, you'll be able to support them to build a relationship. But I've put down the side here, combining these strategies and adapting them to the uniqueness of the child, and sharing them with other people such as educators, caregivers, mental health professionals. All of these people will work together in a holistic way to be able to follow the plan to support the young person. And they're going to change, because sometimes strategies will stop working. Sometimes, I don't know, the positive reinforcement, they might have grown. They might be like, yeah, right, whatever, sure, and it might not work anymore. So we're going to keep reviewing and updating these strategies. Describe social care and ethics and values informing relationships with children and young people. So I'll put these over the next few slides. But social care and ethics is all about these following categories. You can example this very easily. So it's being respectful of autonomy. So being able to get the child to encourage them to voice their own feelings and opinions and making choices for themselves and decisions. We're going to ensure we're non-discriminative and inclusive wherever possible. Treating the child fairly, regardless of their background. That's another part of the social care ethics. Best interest of the child. It's always about the best interest of the child. That is another social care ethics that we're going to follow. Also, we're going to adhere into that confidentiality and privacy. However, when obviously sharing safeguarding concerns, we will be mindful of confidentiality, but we do need to share those. But this is another one. Empowerment and participation. Giving a child empowerment. It's really important. It does come with its own risks, but we must empower these children. Giving the child empowerment will definitely produce more positive outcomes. So look at that. Safety and well-being as well. Obviously promoting that level of well-being, keeping the child safe. That will support the child as well, especially to build positive relationships. So these are the social care ethics we're looking at. Again, the best way to answer that is, obviously you've got a list of them here, don't just list them off. So if you pick one of them or two of them and say, you know, we ensure that we respect autonomy, you can list a couple of them and then home in on a couple and then say, respecting autonomy, we always encourage the young person to make decisions on their own or to make collaborative decisions with staff, such as we were talking about what we wanted for dinner this week, blah, 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 blah. You could give examples of empowering the young person, whichever it is, whichever. But do make sure you pick a couple. You could put the list down of a few of them, but then pick a couple to break it down. When I ask you to do this, it's a way of showing what you've taken from this. So it's not me just saying, these are the answers, write the answers down. It's me saying, well, these are the answers. Think about how you apply these into your practice. That's what it's more about. Here's a few more. Professional boundaries, obviously. Advocacy, continuous professional development for yourself as well. Integrity, being transparent as well. You have to be transparent. You really, really have to be completely and utterly open within every element of your practice. It's one of the most important things to do when trying to build a relationship. These children can see straight through you when you're not being truthful. Genuinely, they'll see straight through you. They can read you like a book. So having that level of transparency will support the relationship and also adheres to the ethical care as well. Right, so we're coming on the last few questions now. Outline sources of advice and support from others when concerned about the relationship and attachment behaviour of a child or a young person. So what I'm looking at for this is we need to be looking, you can do it obviously if you've experienced it firsthand, you might not have, but sometimes we work really, 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 really hard to build a really good relationship with children and young people. But sometimes it can be developed so much so that the child can become possessive of the staff member. They might not want any of the children or young people to have contact with their staff. They own the staff member almost like. So what are we going to do about this? We've got a child that's got a really controlling attachment maybe with a staff member. It might be that their attachment with their parents is quite, oh gosh, damaging. It could be a very damaging. The parents could be struggling to build an attachment, or it could be a case of the parents are developing a really unhealthy attachment with the child. There might be a high level of inconsistency. But I'm going to look at it from the internal perspective of my experience on many of occasions. You work so hard, you build this attachment, and therefore now you are the primary attachment. So much so, you know, you see yourself, or perhaps you've seen your staff member, I don't want to say suffering, but maybe struggling a little bit from the control level of the young person. So what are you going to do? You're going to have to seek out other professionals. You may have to have a word with the social worker. You may well have to have a word with the school. You are definitely going to have a word with the team, 100%. You're going to have to be able to look at how you're going to be able to manage it. We may have to pull the staff member away for a little bit. I've known staff to be seconded to the homes to give them a breather and to also take control of the attachment because it's got too severe. But there is other avenues as well. You can look externally as well. Someone can get an unhealthy attachment with another adult, which I don't know how to describe this, but I always call it my spider senses. You know, when you feel that something just isn't quite right, something doesn't sit right with you. When you ever get a feeling about a relationship between a young person and another adult, and you have that feeling, I would trust that feeling. That feeling is there for a reason. And if you do feel that, there's no shame in whistleblowing or speaking to your manager, or if it's outside, if it's more external with the families and that, maybe it's racing it with a social worker or the young person's IRO, whichever it is. It may even be the social worker that there's an unhealthy relationship with, or you've got to report it. You've got to manage it, you've got to report it. And if it's something with the parents, you can, like I've put on here, refer them to the parents helpline. There's plenty of parents helplines. But these are a number of other resources that you may use to try and support an unhealthy attachment, or if you've got concerns about a relationship or attachment, whether they're good, whether they're bad. So let's have a look at some more what it might look like in the residential home. So what you're going to do, these strategies you're going to implement to support it. I've said to you, if we looked at the example of a staff member becoming almost controlled by the child, we're going to look at staff debriefing. We're going to do this team working thing. We're going to risk assess it. We're going to change a staff member. We're going to maybe have to give protected time. So whether that's protected time with the child who's overly attached, or protective time with the staff member with other children. You're certainly going to have to monitor it. You have to really, really monitor this. You'll have to do key works as well, trying to educate the child in a discreet way around the attachment, being a little bit coercive and a little bit controlling. So you're going to do that. And I've said to you earlier, secondment. Sometimes we have to make a secondment and send a child a staff member to another home to give them a bit of breathing space. So this last thing is, excuse me, I want you to answer all the questions that I've gone through with you. Now, again, you can answer them as examples, you can answer them as hypothetical. I don't just want you to answer questions. I need you to embed your understanding of the question. So by doing so, given the examples or hypothetical situations. So you can, answer the whole workbook like that. But at the end here, what I want from you, now this is what I'm going to use for your endpoint assessment. I want you to write a story. And I want the story, it's called a reflective account. And this is what we're going to be using for your EPA portfolio. So I want you to write a reflective account of how you have built a positive relationship with a child or a young person. I want you to be able to explain and cover a number of factors. It can be with a young person. I mean, that's best really, because that's what we're looking at. But if you're still new to the sector or something like that, you could look at working with, or it can be the family members. But you could look at working with the other staff as well. Predominantly, I would prefer the young person. But these are the topics I want you to cover. I want you to think about the strategies that you've used. I want you to think about the communication methods that you've used. I want you to think about the approach that you used. When I say approach, I mean weighing up what the child needs. So for example, some children you can just get involved with straight away. Some children you might have to take your time. It might be a relationship that you have to take your time with and not force yourself upon them, force yourself into that relationship. You might have to do it over a slow period of time. Implementing those boundaries and maintaining consistency, that'll be another thing that I want you to put in the story. Displaying empathy, patience, quality time together, and how did you build the relationship with the child. So really what I'm looking for, what this must read like is, I'm going to give you a brief example. So a young person was referred to the home. We've got the young person in the home. Straight away, I welcomed them into the home. I took them into their room, advised them of their room. I spent a bit of time with them, reassuring them, offering them comfort about how it's going to be, what's going to happen next. And then literally sat outside their bedroom for a little while. I have previously read the referral paperwork, to be fair. I read that the young person's likes and dislikes, and I evidenced how relationships had previously broken down. I was really mindful of trigger words that were used in this paperwork. So when I was communicating with this young person, I was always mindful of the trigger words. I read on the paperwork that he actually really liked playing football. So I made it apparent to order some football goals. But what I did was I included the young person in ordering these football goals. So I sat down with them at the computer for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and we picked ones that he really liked the look of. We ordered those, we went to collect them together, and then we spent time in the garden putting the football goals up. We did laugh because I was trying to pump the football up and it kept blowing away, and I wasn't doing it right, but he found that very funny. Anyway, that do you see how I was telling the story? I want the story to flow like this. I want you to be literally tell me the story so much detail that it's almost like I was with you when it was happening. I should be able to read the story and actually I've been there. It's so detailed. But by doing so, you will meet this criteria of one of the questions. We won't have to get a recording on this, but also as well, I've got another piece of evidence to pop in your EPA portfolio. I know it's been really, really long, and I'm hoping that you've used the time, the ability to be able to pause and have breathers through this session. I have done much the same my end. It is a really, really important unit, so that's why it is a little bit longer than normal. Relationships safeguarding a kid is priority. Next one is building these relationships up. So I hope you've enjoyed the session. You've reached the end. Obviously, if you do need any additional support, especially with that reflective account, do reach out to me. I'm always available. Thank you for your time.